This episode is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the #1 seller of games and gaming accessories. And GatheringMagic.com, the #1 resource for Magic the Gathering news and articles.
Hi, I'm Alex, and this is my Gwafa Hazid Commander deck. So, this is Gwafa. He's a 2/2 human rogue for 3. You can pay a white and a blue and tap him to put a bribery counter on target creature you don't control, and that creature's controller gets to draw a card. So he's bribing them into not attacking, because as long as he's in play, creatures with bribery counters on them can't attack or block. The deck runs 11 plains and 11 islands. Got some duels here in Glacial Fortress, Azorius Chancery, Sejiri Refuge, Azorius Guildgate. Got some fetches in Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, Bant Panorama. Got some utility lands. Got Mystifying Maze, really nice in a defensive, what I like to call a pill fort style commander. School at Water's Edge lets me use Gwafa's ability multiple times in the turn and really start locking things down. Halimar Depths lets you see extra cards without having to cast a spell. Lonely Sandbar, sometimes you don't want to land and you want an extra card. Reliquary Tower, this deck draws a lot of cards, and as soon as you hit Reliquary Tower, your hand is huge. Got some mana rocks here, got Azorius Signet and Mystifying Borderpost. Got a Disenchant, sometimes you just really need to blow up their problem permanents. I run Counterspell and Faerie Trickery, slow controlling style deck. Got to run some counterspells. Got a couple Wraths in here. Terminus, really good for tucking opponents' commanders and tucking everything for that matter. And Divine Reckoning I like because it's mostly a Wrath, but with the flashback it's kind of like 2 Wraths, so really like that one. Now here are some of the enchantments that help me lock down the game. Martial Law, Detain creatures. I really like Detain because it stops them from using their activated abilities as well, which is sometimes more powerful than their attacks. Ghostly Prison stops people from attacking me sometimes, especially when I'm dealing with token decks. It really gets expensive to attack me. Sphere of Safety is nice because this deck runs a lot of enchantments, and I've had games with 7 or 8 enchantments in play, and paying that much per attack is real tough. Norn's Annex, unless you're playing white, you're going to have to pay some life, which helps me out, again, makes people not want to attack me. Dissipation Field, really powerful. Hoses tokens pretty good. Attack me with a big fatty, sure, you're going to have to cast it again. Really like it. If I don't want you to attack me, I probably don't want you to target me either, so Leyline of Sanctity gets that done, and top it all off, Greater Auramancy to protect all those, because nothing's worse than playing those and then having them removed. I have an Intrepid Hero in here because he does a really good job of removing big fatties off the field, and he's relatively cheap too. Gomazoa makes it quite difficult to attack me with nice creatures. I really like shuffling opponents' commanders in to the point where most people just won't attack me if I have Gomazoa in play, and even if not, I don't mind shuffling away your big dragon or something like that. Again, don't attack me. Stuffy Doll, again. You attack me on the ground, you're going to end up doing that damage to yourself. And I do run Pariah in here, so there's a neat little combo there that I'll get to later. And when he's not doing anything, he can ping you. Silent Arbiter keeps the attacks low. You can only attack with 1 creature each turn. And with all the controlling I do, it's really easy to basically turn this into a you're not allowed to attack. Archon of the Triumvirate. 4/5 isn't a bad body on a flyer. 7's a little expensive, but detaining 2 non-land permanents that your opponents control. So you can attack one player and detain another player's permanents, non-land permanents. And the fact that you get to do 2, he's a lot of value. Orus, when I'm honing what creatures you're allowed to attack with, I can really invalidate your attacks by just basically preventing all damage to one of my blockers. And again, don't attack me. And Ith, again, he's a Maze of Ith on a big dude. Stops attacks, and he's nice because you can suspend him for 2 early game, and then later in the game when they're trying to hit you with their big guy, you can just say no. There's Pariah that I was talking about. Whenever damage, redirect it to enchanted creature, all damage dealt to you. So when you put this on Stuffy Doll, you just let your opponent hit you, and all the damage gets directed to Stuffy Doll, and then gets directed to their face. So that's a fun little combo. And on top of that, even if you don't have Stuffy Doll, just putting it on one of your opponent's creatures is nice, because when they hit you, it'll redirect the damage to their creature, basically making this a roundabout removal spell, which is kind of fun because you can put it on one player's creature, and then another player will attack you just for the sake of removing that creature sometimes. I run a fair amount of creature enchantments in this deck. I run Pacifism just because there's a lot of cards that like having enchantments in play, and this can, again, block up combat. Cage of Hands lets you bounce it when you want to. You know, if there's a Wrath, you can get it back into your hand before it goes to the graveyard. Arrest is nice because you can, if someone's got a commander that's all about using their abilities, this stops that. I run Vow of Flight and Vow of Duty. Lets your opponent still have fun with their creatures. You know, you stop them from attacking you, but then you give it 2/2 and flying, and then they can go and wreak havoc on your opponents, and that's a lot of fun. Soul Snare, enchantment-based removal. Lots of combos with enchantments in here, so I like having as many enchantment-based spells as possible. Nevermore is nice because you can just name your opponent's commander, stop them from using it, or if you're playing a deck that you know runs an annoying combo, as they're setting it up, you can name one of the combo pieces and really just stop them in their tracks. Journey to Nowhere removes a creature from the game. Oblivion Ring, non-land permanent from the game. Detention Sphere is Oblivion Ring, but if you hit a token with it, it removes all the tokens, so love it. Rootwater Matriarch is nice because there's a fair amount of creature enchantments in this game, and while it doesn't, or in this deck, and while it doesn't work too well with Pacifism and Arrest and whatnot, it does work nice with the Vows, and there are some other creature enchantments in this deck that pump creatures, and I can just stick it on. I can give you an enchantment and then just take the creature from you, which is nice. This is the controlling part of the deck. I have Roil Elemental, great for stealing creatures over and over and over again whenever I play a land. Control Magic, give me your guy. Mind Control, give me another guy. Persuasion, give me another guy. Corrupted Conscious, give me a guy and let's give him Infect. Conjured Currency, let's start doing some trades. This card's pretty fun because it lets me and my friends play fairly casually, and this lets, while you steal their biggest thing, they can then go around, and this usually makes its way around the table a few times. It's also nice because I find it's quite a flavor win with Gwafa, considering he's a Profiteer, you know, Conjured Currency. Volition Reigns, give me your Planeswalker, or your creature, but most of the time give me your Planeswalker. And Spirited Away, give me your big ground guy, and I just turned him into a fly guy. This one really can turn the game around. And with all those controlling enchantments and pacifisms and whatnot, it's nice to be able to tutor them up, especially 3 of them. You know, this is any deck that runs a lot of auras should be running 3 Dreams, because for 5 mana, tutoring 3 cards is really good. Auramancer, get one of those auras back, or get any enchantment back for that matter. Retether, again, really good, especially after a Wrath when people are trying to set back up and you've got all these pacifisms and whatnot in the graveyard, and mind controls and whatnot, bring them all back into play, and all of a sudden you've got a bunch of stuff and your opponent doesn't have much. Same, Open the Vaults. This one's a little riskier. You gotta judge it because it'll let your opponents get their artifacts back. I don't find people play too many enchantments, so that doesn't usually come up too much, but this one you just have to be careful of. Got a few clones in here too. The original, you know, clone. Metamorph, good for stealing artifacts as well. Cryptoplasm I like a lot too because you can change who he is at each turn as the game progresses. Phantasmal Image, good for popping commanders for cheap and stealing creatures when you just really, or cloning creatures when you really need to. So, as I said before, this deck runs a lot of enchantments, and Mesa Enchantress lets you draw cards off all those, and I mentioned the amount of card drawn in this deck. So we also have Strumgeist. Having a lot of cards in your hand is nice. Having a huge flyer is nice. And hitting your opponent and drawing cards is nice. Aeon Chronicler, again, power and toughness equal to the number of cards in your hand. When you need to draw some cards, you can suspend him. If not, you can just drop him and have a huge creature. And Righteous Authority is an enchantment that kind of turns another creature into a similarly affected creature. It gives +1/+1 for every card in your hand, and it lets you draw an extra card each turn. So kind of fuels itself. Mind Unbound. This card can get out of hand unless your opponent removes it fairly quickly. I've actually almost decked myself with it. Sometimes if the games go long, you'll end up drawing 10 cards a turn. But I like drawing cards and I like enchantments, so there it is. It's also, after I've locked down the board, I need to win. So there's a few big flying creatures and big fatties in this deck, and this is kind of the win condition portion. So Sphinx of Lost Truths, not a huge flyer, but draws the extra cards. And I like Sphinxes in this deck, Azorius, Sphinxes, whatnot. Sphinx of Magosi, draw cards, big fatty, love it. Sphinx of Utham, draw cards, or Factor Fiction on a flying fatty. Consecrated Sphinx, everyone hates this guy. You end up drawing a lot of cards, and especially with Gwafa, you put a bribery counter on an opponent's creature, they get to draw a card, you get to draw 2 cards, so value all the way around. And Asperia, the Supreme Judge. Again, big flying Sphinx that stops your opponents from attacking you, and when they do, you get to draw cards. She really fits the deck, and I wouldn't argue if someone said she should be the commander, but I just like Gwafa because he's foil. Run a lot of enchantments, and this card, if you can play it early, Sigil of the Empty Throne, can get out of hand. You drop it the following turn, you pacify 3 of your opponent's dudes with various cards, and you get 3 4/4 angels and whatnot. This card can be really good if their opponents, if you can time it right, because there's a fair amount of cheap enchantments in this deck that let you get away with getting multiple angels in a turn. The Elocutors I like because when you're not attacking me, it really makes your opponents have to deal with that, because stalling out just wins me the game, I run Bruna because, here. I have Eldrazi Conscription, so Celestial Mantle, the Sovereigns of Lost Alara, and Bruna, the Light of Alabaster. So Sovereigns, we all know what Sovereigns does. Whenever you attack with a creature alone, you get to fetch an aura out of your deck and give it to them, basically making them an Eldrazi for free, or once you've got the Eldrazi on there, give them Celestial Mantle too, just to start doubling your life. But that usually gets hit with removal fairly quickly. So the nice thing about Bruna is once all those enchantments are in your graveyard, you attack or block with her and you just get to pull everything out. It works well with the vows too. You give her an extra +2/+2 here and there. She's real good. And so yeah, that rounds out my Gwafa Commander deck. Thank you for watching CMDR decks. Don't forget to subscribe and favorite.